Have you ever wondered why the Book of Enoch is only in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible? This Bible is a window into an ancient world of faith, politics, and preservation. To understand why Enoch was kept in Ethiopia but lost everywhere else, we have to go back to the dawn of Christianity itself. Ethiopia is one of the oldest Christian nations in the world. Christianity took root there as early as the 4th century, when King Azana of the Aksumite Empire made it the official religion, centuries before most of Europe converted. But the roots of Ethiopia's faith run even deeper. According to their national epic, The Glory of Kings, the Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon in Jerusalem, and their son Menelik became Ethiopia's first emperor. The story says Menelik returned home carrying the Ark of the Covenant in itself. That link to Israel's God shaped Ethiopia's unique fashion of Jewish and Christian tradition, and that ancient Semitic heritage explains a lot about their biblical canon. While most of the world follows either the 66-book Protestant Bible or the 73-book Catholic one, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church recognizes 81 books as part of their canon, and one of them is the Book of Enoch. Written in the centuries before Christ, Enoch expands on Genesis, describing the Watchers, angels who fell from heaven, their forbidden union with humans, and the divine judgment that followed. It paints a cosmic vision of rebellion and restoration, a bridge between Genesis and Revelation. Early Jews and the first Christians revered it. The New Testament book of Jude even quotes it directly. But after the early centuries of Christianity, the text vanished from nearly every Western Bible except in Ethiopia, where it was never lost. So why did other Bibles exclude it? The answer lies in church politics and theological control. By the 4th century, Christian leaders were overwhelmed by a flood of writings, some authentic, others speculative. Councils like Nicaea and later Carthage and Rome debated which books were inspired and which weren't. Enoch, though ancient, didn't fit the standard. They argued it was pseudepigrapha, a work falsely attributed to the biblical patriarch. When St. Jerome compiled the Latin Vulgate around 400 AD, Enoch and other apocryphal texts were excluded. And centuries later, when King James authorized his English Bible in 1611, that decision was reinforced. The Enochic writings were officially out. Meanwhile, Ethiopia, isolated by geography and uninterested in Rome's reforms, kept its ancient canon intact. In the Ethiopian church, Enoch remained as it always had been, sacred scripture. At the same time, the Jewish scriptural tradition itself was changing. When Christianity spread beyond Judea, Greek had already become the international language of learning. Jewish scholars in Alexandria had translated their scriptures into Greek nearly 3 centuries before Christ. This was the Septuagint, the version the apostles and Jesus themselves quoted. The Septuagint contained additional writings like Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, Sirach, Baruch, and 1-2 Maccabees, books later called the Deuterocanon. Centuries later, after the fall of Jerusalem, Jewish scribes standardized a new Hebrew edition known as the Masoretic text, finalized roughly between the 7th and 10th centuries AD, long after the Septuagint was in use. When the Protestant Reformation arrived in the 1500s, Martin Luther favored this newer Hebrew Masoretic canon over the older Greek one. Because the deuterocanonical text had never been translated into Hebrew, he separated them into an Apocrypha section. Good for reading, he said, but not equal to Scripture. We tend to think of the Old Testament as having been originally written in Hebrew and the New Testament in Greek, but actually Hebrew was considered a dead language or liturgical language during the Hellenistic period, when the Apocrypha were written. Fast forward 10 centuries, and the Masoretic text was compiled by rabbinic scholars from the ancient Hebrew Bible. Their decision to exclude the apocryphal text was twofold. One, they wanted to maintain a clearer distinction between Jewish and Christian scriptures, which led them to rely solely on the Hebrew text from their official canon. And two, the apocryphal texts were written after the traditional Jewish era of prophecy was believed to have ended. Then we fast forward to 1947 and the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are older than both the Septuagint and Masoretic texts, and it gets even messier. In some places, the Dead Sea Scrolls more closely match the Masoretic text. In other cases, it more closely matches the Greek Septuagint. In the case of the Book of Psalms, the Dead Sea Scrolls vary significantly from both the Septuagint and the Masoretic text. In the case of Jeremiah, the Dead Sea Scrolls preserve 2 versions which are quite different from one another. One version matches the Masoretic text, and the other version matches the Septuagint. Perhaps unsurprisingly, fragments of the Book of Enoch were among the Dead Sea Scrolls, The large number of Enoch manuscripts found at Qumran indicate that the work was highly valued by the community living there, likely the Essenes. Most scholars agree that the books of Enoch weren't written by Enoch himself. One theory to consider is that the book may have been passed down by oral tradition similar to other Jewish oral traditions. Centuries after the church had settled its canon, another moment reshaped the Bible itself. In 1604, England's King James I ordered a new translation, not only to honor God, but to calm a nation divided by faith. Different English Bibles, each colored by politics and theology, were fueling tension between Puritans and Anglicans. The King James Bible, completed in 1611, was meant to unify the realm and affirm royal authority. What few realize is that the original edition actually included the deuterocanonical texts, like Tobit, Judith, and the Maccabees, printed between the Old and New Testaments. But over time, Protestant publishers dropped them, claiming they weren't part of the Hebrew canon. That's why today Protestant Bibles contain 66 books, while the Catholic and Orthodox canons retain 73. And the Ethiopian Bible still preserves 81, including the Book of Enoch. Even within Ethiopia, two canons exist. The broader canon, which contains 81 books, including Enoch, Jubilees, and the Shepherd of Hermas, and a narrower canon more consistent with the Catholic Bible. Still, Enoch remains a hallmark of Ethiopian faith, linking it to Christianity's earliest mystical roots. Ethiopia's isolation helped it preserve far more than the Book of Enoch. Its entire church structure, language, and ritual trace back to Christianity's earliest centuries. Their liturgy is still sung in Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic tongue related to Hebrew and Aramaic. Their churches are carved straight into stone. Their priests carry replicas of the ark, and their worship mirrors the ancient Temple of Jerusalem. They even observe both Saturday and Sunday as holy days, reflecting their blend of Jewish and Christian heritage. So why is the Book of Enoch in the Ethiopian Bible, but not in any other? Because while much of the Christian world chose uniformity, Ethiopia chose preservation. They safeguarded an ancient vision of the divine, one where angels fall, heaven weeps, and humanity awaits redemption. The rest of the world may have forgotten Enoch's words, but high in the mountains of Ethiopia, written in Ge'ez on centuries-old parchment paper, the Book of Enoch still speaks.